Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Aliens auctioned a useless creature. Until the human mechanic saw its true value. The Vinder auction hall was a spectacle of luxury and cruelty, where the galaxy's wealthiest gathered to buy the rarest and most exotic creatures. The air buzzed with chatter, the clink of glasses, and the sharp, rhythmic voice of the auctioneer announcing bids. Cages lined the walls, each containing something considered valuable by those with deep pockets and shallow hearts. Among the vibrant plumage of alien birds and the shimmering scales of aquatic beasts was a small, unremarkable cage shoved into a dark corner. Inside, a frail albino wolf pup huddled its thin body, trembling with cold and fear. Its fur, pale as stardust, stood in stark contrast to the shadows around it, and its eyes, icy blue and haunting, blinked slowly, almost resigned. It had never known warmth, never felt affection. The handlers had scoffed at it, calling it defective. Its unique coloring was seen as ugly, a mutation that made it less valuable. It had been neglected, left to survive on scrap while the other creatures were pampered for presentation. Now, it waited in that cage, its fate dangling like a frayed thread. No one noticed it, no one cared, until him. Corbin Vex stood at the entrance, leaning heavily on a cane that had seen better days. His eyes, tired and sharp all at once, scanned the room with a mix of disinterest and disdain. His clothes were worn and patched where time had frayed them, and his presence drew little attention amidst the glittering crowd. Once he had been someone, a mechanic whose name echoed across shipyards and spaceports, but time had stripped him of everything, his reputation, his work, and his will to hope. Now, he was just another forgotten soul drifting through the galaxy's cracks. He didn't know why he had come, maybe to remind himself of how far he had fallen, maybe because the emptiness in his chest had become unbearable, or perhaps because fate had a cruel sense of timing. His gaze flitted over the various cages, impressed, until he saw it, the small, pale figure in the corner. His breath caught, and for a moment the noise of the auction hall faded into a dull hum. The pup's eyes locked onto his, and in that instant something within him stirred, a long-buried ember flickering to life. He limped closer, leaning on his cane, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't for years. The pup whimpered softly, pressing itself further into the corner as if expecting more cruelty. "Hey there, little one," he whispered, his voice rough but gentle. The pup stared at him unblinking. There was no trust in those eyes, only weariness. But Corbin saw more. He saw himself, forgotten, unwanted, alone, and something inside him broke. The auctioneer's voice rang out, sharp and clear, "Next up, lot 72, a rare albino wolf pup, though perhaps not to everyone's taste." His tone carried a hint of mockery, prompting soft laughter from the crowd. The pup was brought forward, its small body barely filling the display pedestal. It shivered under the harsh lights, its pink nose twitching nervously. "Starting bid at 50 credits, the auctioneer announced, clearly expecting little interest. Silence followed. Corbin clenched his fists, his heart twisting. He didn't have much left, credits, pride, or otherwise, but something inside him screamed that he couldn't let this creature face whatever fate awaited it. 40 CRs, someone muttered sarcastically, eliciting chuckles. 20, another joked. Corbin's breath hitched. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his decision before he even made it. 30 credits, he rasped, his voice barely carrying over the crowd. Heads turned, laughter died. 30 credits from Corbin Vex, whispers spread like wildfire. Corbin Vex, the disgraced mechanic, what was he doing here? Someone scoffed. No way, didn't think he could afford a glass of water, let alone a creature. 40 credits, a young noble sneered, clearly more interested in humiliating Corbin than owning the pup. Corbin's jaw tightened, he dug into his pocket, feeling the worn chip that held the last of his savings. It wasn't much, it was all he had. 50 credits, he called louder this time. The noble raised an eyebrow, then smirked, 60. Corbin's chest tightened painfully, he couldn't go higher, he just couldn't. But then the noble chuckled and waved dismissively, not worth it. The auctioneer, slightly bewildered, waited for another bid. None came. Sold to Corbin Vex for 50 credits. The gavel struck, and the room erupted into murmurs. Corbin barely heard them, his eyes were locked on the pup as the handlers shoved it into his arms. It flinched at first, then froze, unsure of what to do. Corbin cradled it gently, his rough hand was surprisingly tender. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." The pup stared at him, and for the first time Corbin saw something in those icy blue eyes that mirrored his own, a flicker of hope. The ride back to Corbin's small workshop on the outskirts of Vender's capital was silent, save for the faint hum of his old speeder. The albino wolf pup, still trembling slightly, was curled up on the passenger seat, occasionally glancing at him with wary eyes. Corbin kept his gaze on the road ahead, but every so often his fingers twitched with the urge to reach out and offer comfort. He was afraid any sudden movement might scare the little creature further. When they finally arrived, Corbin parked outside his modest dwelling, a rusted single-story structure patched together with scrap metal and memories of better days. He let out a long sigh, the weight of his decision settling on his shoulders. What the hell was I thinking, he wondered. He could barely afford to keep himself afloat, let alone care for a living creature, and yet, as he glanced at the pup still curled up tightly, a part of him knew he'd do it all over again without hesitation. "Come on, kid," he muttered, gently lifting the pup into his arms. It flinched but didn't struggle, too exhausted to resist. Corbin carried it inside, the door sliding shut behind them with a hiss. The workshop was cluttered but cozy, tools strewn across workbenches, half-finished mechanical projects stacked in corners, and an old, patched-up couch against the far wall. The faint scent of engine oil and metal filled the air. Corbin set the pup down on the couch and grabbed an old blanket from a nearby chair. He hesitated for a moment, then draped it over the little creature, who blinked up at him, surprised by the sudden warmth. Corbin crouched down, resting his arms on his knees. "Don't look at me like that," he grumbled softly, though there was no bite in his voice. "I'm not some hero, I just couldn't leave you there." The pup blinked, then let out a soft whimper. Corbin's heart twisted. He reached out tentatively, brushing a hand over its soft, pale fur. It flinched at first, but then settled, leaning slightly into his touch. "There we go," he whispered. "It's okay now." That night, Corbin couldn't sleep. He sat at his workbench, absent-mindedly tinkering with an old servo while his thoughts raced. His reputation had already been in tatters, and now word would spread fast. Corbin Vex, the washed-up mechanic who wasted his last credits on a useless creature. He could already hear the mocking laughter, but every time he glanced at the couch where the pup now slept soundly, its tiny chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, those thoughts didn't seem to matter as much. The next morning, Corbin was jolted awake by the faint sound of claws clicking against the metal floor. He blinked, realizing he had fallen asleep at the workbench. Stretching with a groan, he turned to see the pup wandering around the workshop, sniffing curiously at wires and tools. "Hey," he called out, his voice still rough from sleep. The pup's ears perked up, and it immediately froze, eyeing him warily. Corbin chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Relax, kid, you're not in trouble." The pup tilted its head, seemingly processing his words, then cautiously approached. Corbin crouched down and held out a hand. "Got to call you something, huh?" he thought for a moment, observing the pup's pale fur that seemed to glow faintly under the dim lights. "Luno," he whispered. "Yeah, that fits. What do you think?" Luno blinked, then let out a soft, approving whimper. Corbin chuckled, scratching behind its ears. "Luno it is." Over the next few days, Luno settled into Corbin's routine. It followed him around the workshop, curiously watching as he repaired old engines and recalibrated broken circuits. At first, Corbin found it a little distracting, but soon he found himself talking to Luno as he worked, sharing stories of his past, of the ships he had built, the places he had traveled, and the mistake that cost him everything. Luno listened, its icy blue eyes filled with something Corbin hadn't seen in a long time, understanding. Food was a challenge at first. Corbin had little to spare, but he scooped what he could, even trading some of his tools for better rations. It wasn't much, but Luno didn't seem to mind. In fact, the pup often left its own food untouched until Corbin made sure he had eaten too. One night, as Corbin sat cross-legged on the floor tightening bolts on an old stabilizer, Luno curled up beside him, resting its head on his lap. Corbin froze, looking down at the pup slowly. He reached out, running his fingers through its soft fur. Luno let out a contented sigh. Corbin felt something in his chest loosen, a knot he hadn't even realized was there. "I guess we're stuck with each other now, huh?" he whispered. Luno nuzzled closer, and for the first time in years, Corbin allowed himself to smile. Word traveled fast in Vendor's capital. The auction had been uneventful for most, but the news of Corbin Vex's unexpected purchase spread like wildfire. Luno's peculiar appearance and Corbin's tarnished reputation made for the perfect gossip. At first, Corbin ignored the whispers, let them talk, he didn't care. But as days turned into weeks, the attention started to feel more ominous. Strange faces lingered near his workshop, their eyes filled with curiosity and greed. Corbin tightened security, reinforcing the locks and installing surveillance systems salvaged from old ships. He knew all too well what could happen to creatures like Luno if the wrong people got their hands on them. Late one night, as Corbin welded a cracked engine casing, a soft growl from Luno caught his attention. The pup stood near the window, ears perked and growling low in its throat. "What is it, buddy?" Corbin asked, setting down his tools. He approached the window, peering into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing, but then a shadow moved too quickly to be a passerby. "Damn it," Corbin muttered, "they're already sniffing around." Luno let out a soft whimper, pressing close to Corbin's leg. "Don't worry," he whispered, stroking the pup's head. "I won't let anyone take you." The next day, an unexpected visitor arrived. Corbin almost didn't answer the persistent knocking, but curiosity got the better of him. He opened the door to find a tall, imposing figure with sharp features and piercing green eyes. She wore a sleek, dark coat, and her presence screamed authority. "Corbin Vex," she greeted him in a tone neutral but firm. "Who's asking?" Corbin shot back, leaning on his cane. "Agent Wren," she replied, flashing a badge that marked her as part of Vendor's Enforcement Bureau. "I'm here about the wolf." Corbin's heart pounded. "Luno is none of your business." "Sir," she raised an eyebrow, "it became my business when your little purchase caught the attention of certain individuals, dangerous ones." Corbin scoffed. "Let me guess, you're here to take him." She shook her head. "No, I'm here to warn you, there's a collector, Draven Krell. He deals in rare and exotic creatures. He's heard about your wolf, and he's already made plans to take it." Corbin's grip on the door tightened. "Let him try, sir." Wren's eyes softened slightly. "You can't do this alone, Vex." Corbin glanced back at Luno, who watched the exchange from the corner of the room. "I've done everything alone for years, I'll manage." "Sir, aside, just be careful. Krell isn't someone you want to underestimate." As she left, Corbin locked the door. Turning to Luno, he whispered, "Looks like trouble's on its way." Sensing the shift, Luno patted him and pressed its head against his hand. Corbin let out a shaky breath. "We'll be ready." Later, the soft glow of flickering monitors illuminated Corbin's workshop as he hunched over his workbench, surrounded by scattered tools. The faint hum of energy coils filled the room, a soothing rhythm that kept his hands steady even as his mind raced. Luno sat beside him, its icy blue eyes unblinking, watching intently as Corbin's fingers moved deftly, soldering circuits onto a small panel, while his mind simultaneously mapped out every possible point of entry into his home. The warning from Agent Wren had haunted him for days now. Draven Krell wasn't just another collector, he was a predator who thrived on power and fear, and now he had set his sights on Luno. The thought made Corbin's blood boil. He had lost everything once before, his career, his pride, his friends, but he wouldn't lose Luno to someone like Krell. Luno let out a soft whimper, sensing Corbin's tension, and the albino wolf padded closer, resting its head on his lap. Corbin sighed, setting down his tools and stroking the pup's fur gently. "Yeah, I know, kid, we've got a fight coming." He glanced at the crew schematic he had drawn on a scrap piece of metal, a rough plan to reinforce the workshop's defenses. It wasn't much, but it had to be enough. Before he could continue, a sharp knock echoed through the room, making Corbin freeze. Luno's ears perked up, and it growled softly, its hackles rising. Corbin grabbed his blaster, keeping it low but ready, and approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" he called out. "Relax, Vex." "It's me," came a familiar voice. Corbin sighed, unlocking the door to find Agent Wren standing there with her usual stoic expression. "What do you want now?" Corbin grumbled, stepping aside to let her in. Wren took in the cluttered workshop with a raised eyebrow before focusing on Luno, who was now watching her wearily. "He's grown," she observed softly. Corbin crossed his arms. "Is this a social visit or do you have something useful to say?" Wren smirked and went straight to business. "All right, Krell's moving faster than I thought, he's got bounty hunters sniffing around the city. They'll come for you soon." Corbin's jaw tightened. "Let them come." Wren stepped closer, her tone softening. "You don't understand, Krell doesn't play fair. He'll burn this place to the ground if it means getting what he wants." Corbin glanced at Luno, now pressed against his leg. "So what do you suggest? Running?" "Not running, sir," Wren replied, preparing her weapon. "I can help you, but you need to trust me." Corbin scoffed. "Trust? Not exactly my strong suit these days." "I noticed," Wren said dryly, "but you don't have to trust me, trust that I don't want to see Krell win." Corbin studied her for a long moment before nodding reluctantly. "Fine, what's the plan?" The night was darker than usual, the city's neon glow dimmed under the weight of an approaching storm. Corbin worked tirelessly installing makeshift defense systems around the workshop, automated turrets rigged from salvaged parts, reinforced barricades, and motion sensors that flickered to life every time a shadow passed too close. Agent Wren provided blueprints for weak points in the building's structure and helped Corbin patch them up. She moved with military precision, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. Even as they worked, Luno stayed close to Corbin's side, its instincts sharp and alert. Every time a distant sound echoed through the streets, the wolf let out a low growl, ready to defend its home. As the hours stretched on, Corbin found himself glancing at Wren more often than he cared to admit. She wasn't what he had expected, there was a weight in her eyes, a story untold. "Why are you really helping me?" Corbin asked quietly as they reinforced the back entrance. Wren hesitated before answering, "Krell's taken too much from too many. Someone needs to stand up to him." Corbin snorted. "So you picked me, the washed-up mechanic with a target on his back." Wren smirked. "Sometimes the most unexpected pieces make the strongest moves." Corbin chuckled softly. "That's supposed to be comforting. Take it how you want." Wren merely shrugged. As dawn approached, the workshop was as fortified as it could be. Corbin sat on the floor, leaning against the wall with Luno curled up beside him, while Wren stood by the window, watching the streets below. "They'll come soon," she said softly. Corbin nodded. "Let them." Luno lifted its head, eyes gleaming with determination, as together they waited. The attack came just as the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. Corbin's motion sensors flared to life, triggering silent alarms throughout the workshop. Luno was the first to react, bolting upright with a deep growl rumbling from its chest. Corbin grabbed his blaster, adrenaline surging through his veins. Wren was already at the window, her sharp eyes scanning the perimeter. "North side," she whispered, 2, 3 of them. Corbin cursed under his breath. Bounty hunters, definitely. Ren readied her weapon. Krell's finest. The first shot cracked through the morning air, striking the side of the workshop. Corbin ducked, pulling Luno close. All right, kid, time to earn our keep. Luno let out a sharp bark, its pale fur bristling. Ren fired back with impeccable precision. One of the hunters dropped, but the others scattered, taking cover. Corbin activated the automated turrets, and the sound of rapid gunfire filled the air. Yet the bounty hunters were fast, weaving through the narrow alleys with practiced ease. Cover me. Corbin shouted over the noise. He grabbed a makeshift EMP grenade from his workbench. Go. Ren barked, laying down suppressing fire. Corbin sprinted toward the side entrance, throwing the grenade just as one of the hunters aimed at him. The blast sent a pulse through the air, momentarily disabling their tech. Now, Luno, he called. The wolf, a blur in the open doorway thanks to its glowing fur, tackled the nearest hunter. The man screamed, trying to shake Luno off, but the wolf's jaws clamped down hard. Corbin fired at a second hunter, hitting his shoulder. Ren followed with a precise shot that took down the last attacker. Realizing he was outmatched, the remaining enemy fled into the shadows. Corbin panted heavily, wiping sweat from his brow, as Luno trotted back to him with blood on its muzzle but eyes shining with pride. Good job, kid, he whispered, kneeling to hug the wolf tightly. Ren approached, checking the downed hunters. This was just a test, she warned. Krell will send more. Corbin's eyes hardened. Then we'll be ready. Luno let out a low growl, standing tall beside its human. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The calm after the first attack was fleeting, like the eerie stillness before a storm tears through everything in its path. Corbin stood in his workshop, every muscle tense, his fingers twitching near the grip of his blaster. Luno sat beside him, its icy blue eyes fixed on the door, as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. The faint hum of the security systems buzzed in the background, a constant reminder that danger was never far away. Ren paced near the window, her sharp, calculating eyes scanning the street below. Though she had barely spoken since the bounty hunters retreated, Corbin knew her mind was racing. They've won this round, but Krell won't take defeat lightly. No, he will come back with more firepower, more bodies, more desperation. Do you feel it? Ren's voice broke the silence, low and serious. Corbin glanced at her. Feel what? The pressure, she replied, not looking away from the window, as if the whole city is holding its breath. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, it's like waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's not just you, she said softly. Everyone knows Crow doesn't lose, not without retaliation. Corbin chuckled bitterly. Guess there's a first time for everything. Ren turned to face him, her green eyes narrowing. This isn't a joke, Corbin. Krell isn't going to stop, not after what happened today. Corbin muttered, leaning against the workbench, but I'm not handing Luno over to him, not now, not ever. Luno nuzzled against his leg, as if reaffirming the silent promise between them. Ren studied them both for a moment, her expression softening. You really love that wolf, don't you? Corbin smirked. Love? Hell, I barely know what that word means anymore, but Luno, this little guy, gave me a reason to keep fighting. I'm not letting anyone take that away. Ren nodded, a ghost of a smile tugging at her lips. Then we need to be ready. The day stretched on, each hour slower than the last. Corbin busied himself fortifying the workshop, welding reinforced metal over the windows and setting up additional traps around the perimeter. Ren, ever the strategist, mapped out potential entry points and planned countermeasures. Luno never left Corbin's side, watching his every move with unwavering loyalty. As dusk settled over Vendora, casting long shadows through the streets, Corbin finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. Sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall with Luno curled up beside him, he murmured, "Ever wonder how we got here?" Running his fingers through Luno's soft fur, he added, "Me, a washed-up mechanic with nothing left, and you, a tiny ball of trouble no one wanted." Luno let out a soft, contented huff, and Corbin chuckled, "Yeah, me neither." The peaceful moment was shattered by the shrill scream of the alarm system. Corbin shot to his feet, blaster in hand, as Agent Wren moved with her weapon drawn, scanning the monitors. "They're here," she said grimly. Corbin's heart pounded. "How many?" Wren's jaw tightened. "Too many," Corbin cursed softly as the monitors flickered, showing dark figures moving swiftly through the alleys, closing in from all sides. "Krell isn't holding back this time." "Get ready," he muttered. "This is going to be rough." Luno growled low, standing protectively in front of Corbin, its fur bristling. The first blast hit the front door, sending sparks flying. Corbin fired back instantly, hitting one of the attackers, while Wren took out another with a precise shot through the window. The workshop turned into a war zone, explosions rattled the walls, and smoke filled the air. Corbin's ears rang from the constant gunfire, but he never stopped moving, never stopped fighting. Luno darted through the chaos, using its small size to its advantage, leaping onto attackers and knocking them off balance. Its pale fur glowed faintly in the dim light, making it a ghostly blur that was impossible to hit. Corbin shot an attacker trying to flank him, then ducked behind a workbench to reload. "We can't hold them off forever," he shouted over the noise. "I know." Wren yelled back, firing relentlessly. "We need an exit." Corbin's mind raced. The back door was already compromised, and the front was a death trap. Then it hit him, the old service hatch. I shouted, "Wren, cover me." Wren nodded reluctantly, and without hesitation, she disappeared down the hatch with Luno close behind. Corbin fired a few more shots before diving in after them, sealing the hatch behind him just as an explosion rocked the workshop above. They crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel, the sound of gunfire fading behind them, until finally they emerged into the night, gasping for air. Corbin looked back at the smoke rising from what used to be his home. His chest ached, not from the fight, but from the realization that everything he had left was gone, everything except Luno. The wolf pressed against him, its glowing blue eyes filled with concern. Corbin wrapped an arm around it and took a shaky breath. "We're still standing," he whispered. "That's all that matters." Wren placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll find another way, Krell hasn't won yet." Corbin nodded. "No, he hasn't. But deep down, I know the final confrontation is coming, and I'll be ready." The safe house they reached was little more than an abandoned storage unit on the outskirts of the city, but it was hidden, and for now, that was enough. Corbin patched up his blaster while Luno curled up beside him, occasionally lifting its head to sniff the air. Wren paced, deep in thought. "We can't keep running," she muttered. "Krell has too many eyes, too many resources." Corbin sighed. "Then what do you suggest?" "Surrender," she shot him a glare. "Of course not, but we need a plan, a real one." Corbin leaned back, thinking. "If we hit him where it hurts, take out his resources and his allies, maybe we stand a chance." Wren nodded slowly. "We'd need to move fast. Krell doesn't give second chances." Corbin smirked. "Neither do I," Luno barked softly, as if in agreement. They spent hours planning and mapping out Krell's network, identifying weak points. Corbin's mechanical skills and Wren's tactical mind formed a formidable duo. Finally, they were ready. Night fell once more, and the city became their battlefield. Corbin and Wren moved like shadows, striking Krell's supply lines, disabling his communications, and turning his allies against him with carefully planted evidence. Each victory was small but devastatingly effective, chipping away at Krell's empire piece by piece. Luno became their secret weapon, its glowing fur and sharp instincts allowed it to navigate the darkest corners of the city unseen. It darted through enemy lines delivering messages, scouting ahead, and even sabotaging equipment with surprising precision. Krell's frustration grew with every loss, his fury was palpable, and Corbin knew they were getting close. Yet, Krell was far from defeated. The final blow came when they intercepted a transmission from Krell himself. He was planning a full-scale assault on the city, blaming Corbin and Luno for his losses. Innocent lives would be caught in the crossfire. Corbin's blood ran cold. We have to stop him. Ren's eyes hardened. We will. The final showdown loomed, and as Corbin prepared his weapons, he glanced at Luno. We've come this far, kid, he whispered. No turning back now. Luno nuzzled his hand, its blue eyes fierce with determination. Together, they would face the fire, and together, they would survive. The city of Vinder stretched beneath the twin moons, its towering spires casting jagged shadows over the sprawling streets below. The neon glow of market stalls flickered like dying embers, and the air crackled with tension. Rumors of Krell's impending attack had spread like wildfire, sending waves of panic through the populace. Merchants shuttered their stores, citizens locked their doors, and the hum of distant ships preparing for evacuation filled the night. But amidst the chaos, three figures moved with purpose through the labyrinthine alleys. Corbin, his face grim and determined, led the way with Luno padding silently beside him, the albino wolf's blue eyes gleaming in the darkness, its pale fur glowing faintly and casting ghostly reflections against the metal walls. Agent Ren moved with the precision of a seasoned soldier, her sharp eyes scanning every shadow for threats. We're running out of time, Ren whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of the city. Corbin's jaw tightened. Then we move faster. He gripped his blaster tightly, the weight of it grounding him. The plan was reckless, but it was their only chance. Krell's stronghold, a heavily fortified compound on the outskirts of the city, was where they would make their stand. It was a place Corbin had sworn never to return to, a graveyard of his past mistakes, but now it was their only hope. As they navigated the maze of alleys, Corbin's mind drifted back to the last time he had faced Krell. He had been younger then, cocky and naive, thinking he could outsmart the notorious collector. But Krell had crushed him, stripping him of everything he held dear. The scars of that defeat still lingered, but now Corbin had something to fight for. He glanced down at Luno, who met his gaze with unwavering loyalty. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about protecting the only family he had left. They reached a narrow bridge overlooking the industrial sector, where Krell's compound loomed like a monolith of greed and power. Agent Ren crouched beside Corbin, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the defenses, turrets on every corner, patrols every 15 minutes, she muttered. We have to disable the power grid first. Corbin nodded. I can handle that. And if you can't? Ren raised an eyebrow. Then we improvise. Corbin replied with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Luno let out a soft growl, sensing the tension. Corbin scratched behind its ears and whispered, We'll be okay, kid. We've got this. The trio moved swiftly, blending into the shadows as they approached the compound. Corbin's heart pounded with each step, drawing them closer to the point of no return. He could feel Luno's warm breath against his hand, a silent reassurance that he wasn't alone. Reaching the perimeter, Corbin pulled out a small device from his belt, a makeshift EMP generator cobbled together from scrap parts. It wasn't pretty, but it would do the job. He glanced at Ren, who gave him a curt nod. 2 minutes, she whispered. That's all you get. More than enough, Corbin replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. As Ren and Luno slipped into the shadows to take their positions, Corbin moved toward the power grid. The fence hummed with energy, but Corbin had spent years dismantling systems just like this with practiced ease. He bypassed the security measures, his fingers moving swiftly over the control panel. Seconds felt like hours as each beep and click echoed louder in his mind. Finally, the system flickered and the compound's lights dimmed. Showtime, Corbin whispered. Activating the EMP, a pulsating energy rippled through the air, and the entire compound plunged into darkness. Ren moved first, taking out the nearest guards with silent precision. Luno followed, a blur of white fur and sharp teeth, as it incapacitated anyone who got too close. Corbin joined them, his blaster firing with deadly accuracy. The element of surprise was theirs, but it wouldn't last long. They reached the main control room, where Krell's voice echoed through the speakers. "Corbin Vex, I should have known you'd crawl out of whatever hole you've been hiding in." Corbin clenched his teeth. "I'm not here for you, Krell. I'm here to end this." Krell's laughter sent chills down Corbin's spine. "End this? Oh, Corbin, you've only just begun." The room shook as automated defenses activated, turrets swiveling toward them. Ren dove for cover, firing back, while Luno darted through the chaos, dodging blasts with an agility bordering on the supernatural. Corbin hacked into the control panel, trying to disable the defenses. Sweat dripped down his face as he worked, but Krell's security was formidable. "Corbin!" Krell shouted, pinning him down with relentless gunfire. "Any day now." "Working on it." Corbin snapped. Luno let out a fierce howl, leaping onto one of the turrets and tearing it apart with its claws. The distraction gave Corbin the time he needed. With one final keystroke, the defenses powered down. The silence that followed was deafening. Agent Ren stood, breathing heavily, her weapon still raised. "Is it over?" she asked. Corbin shook his head. "Not yet." The door to the control room slid open, and Krell stepped in, flanked by heavily armed guards. His cold, calculating eyes locked onto Corbin with a predatory grin. "Impressive, Krell," he drawled, but predictably. Corbin raised his blaster, but Krell's guards were faster, aiming their weapons at Ren and Luno. "Drop it," Krell ordered. Corbin hesitated, but Luno's soft whimper made his decision for him. He lowered his weapon and glared at Krell. "Smart choice." Krell sneered, "But you can't win, Corbin. You never could." Corbin's mind raced, searching for a way out, when he felt it, a spark, a connection. Luno's fur began to glow brighter than ever before, filling the room with an ethereal light. "What is this?" Krell hissed, shielding his eyes. Corbin's heart pounded. "Luno, what are you doing?" The wolf let out a deafening howl and a surge of energy exploded from its body, knocking Krell and his guards to the ground. The room trembled as the light grew blinding, and Corbin felt himself being pulled into the glow. When the light finally dimmed, he found himself standing in a vast open field under a sky filled with stars. The air was crisp, and a gentle breeze whispered through the grass. Luno stood beside him, its fur shimmering like the night sky. "Where are we?" Corbin asked in confusion. "A place beyond time," a soft, melodic voice answered. Corbin turned to see a figure cloaked in light, its features indistinct. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am the Guardian," the figure replied, "and Luno is not just any wolf, he is the last of the Luma, a species bound to protect the balance of the galaxy."